Rule 8. Use representative examples. From a workbook for arguments by Morrow and Weston. Even a large number of examples may still represent the set of things an argument is generalizing about. So, a large number of ancient Roman women, for instance, might establish very little about women generally, since ancient Roman women are not necessarily representative of other women. So, the argument that you're using to generalize would need to consider women from other early times and from other parts of the world in order to make a general claim about early women. So, here's an example of a bad argument from generalization. Everyone in my neighborhood favors McGraw for president. Therefore, McGraw is sure to win. Okay. This argument is weak because single neighborhoods seldom represent the voting population as a whole. A well-to-do neighborhood, for example, may favor a candidate who's unpopular with everybody else. Students and places students live, such as university towns, regularly are carried by candidates who do poorly elsewhere. Besides, we seldom have good evidence even about neighborhood views. The set of people eager to display their political preferences to the world is probably not a representative cross-section of the neighborhood as a whole. And I think that this point, generally speaking, generalizes to other situations. Maybe. I don't know. We'll have to think about that. A good argument that McGraw is sure to win requires a representative sample of the entire voting population. It's not so easy to construct a sample like this. Public opinion polls, for instance, construct their samples very carefully. They learn the hard way, and the classic example of this learning the hard way is a 1936 poll conducted by the Literary Digest to predict the outcome of the presidential contest between Roosevelt and Landon. Names were taken, as they are now, from telephone listings, and also from automobile registration lists. The number of people balloted was certainly not too small. In fact, they balloted over 2 million people. And in this case, the poll predicted a wide victory for Landon. But in reality, Roosevelt won easily. So, in retrospect, it's easy to see what went wrong. In 1936, only very few people owned telephones and cars. And because of this, the sample was sharply biased towards wealthy and urban voters, more of whom supported Landon because they used telephone listings and vehicle registration lists to draw their sample. Now, polls have improved since then. Nonetheless, there are still worries about representativeness of their samples, and they still regularly forecast elections wrong. For example, these days, most people don't have landlines at all, only cell phones with unlisted numbers. So, the pollsters aren't calling people that they don't know their phone numbers. And this again leaves us with a less representative sample. Now, I would add here, if you're interested in polls and polling, the 538 website has an excellent overview of polls, and they rate the quality of their polls. And if you're interested in this kind of thing, I think it's an excellent web resource. So, it's often an open question how representative a given sample might be. So, when you're using representative samples to form generalizations, you should anticipate this problem. So, do some research. In the case of Juliet, for example, Juliet is just one woman. Is she representative of women in her time and place? Well, in Shakespeare's play, Juliet's mother says this to her. Think of marriage now, younger than you. Here in Verona, ladies of esteem are made already mothers. By my count, I was your mother much upon these years, that you are now a maid. So, I'll be honest, it isn't completely clear to me what's going on here, But what this passage is suggesting is that Juliet's marriage at 14 is not exceptional. In fact, according to her mom, 14 seems to be a little old. In general, look for the most accurate cross-section you can find of the population that you're forming your generalization about. If you want to know what students think about some subject at your school, don't just ask people you know or generalize from what you hear in class. Unless you know quite a few different kinds of people from different places, your personal sample is not likely to mirror the whole student body. Now, a few final notes. If you want to know what people in other countries think about the United States, for example, don't just ask tourists. They, after all, have chosen to come here. A careful look at a range of foreign media might give you a more representative picture of what people in other places think about the United States. However, you'll want to make sure that the media is in the national language of the place that you're considering. English language media in a place that mostly speaks French, for example, might not be as representative as the French media would be.